Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine for a second authorizing a $300 dispatch fee for a standard tow truck.
Right, which is just a normal Tuesday for most fleet operators.
Exactly, just a standard operational expense. But then you find out that the specific method of transport, like the tow itself, just destroyed a $15,000 drivetrain on one of your primary commercial delivery vans.
Yeah, it's a massive hidden liability.
It really is. And according to the stack of technical documentation and roadside rescue data we're diving into today, this isn't, some rare edge case. It's happening constantly.
All the time, especially when you're managing complex topography alongside this really fragmented charging infrastructure. You're essentially paying a legacy service provider to physically drag an advanced piece of tech.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, that outright voids the warranty and causes just catastrophic electrical damage. The traditional playbook just hasn't caught up.
It really hasn't. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are speaking directly to you, the B2B fleet manager, the commercial EV operator, the logistics director holding the spreadsheet.
The ones whose entire profit margin relies on keeping vehicles moving.
Exactly. Minimizing that unexpected downtime is everything. And to get into this, we're pulling from this fascinating stack of technical marketing briefs, roadside rescue documentation, and operational strategies specifically from EEE Rescue.
Yeah, and their deployment framework for Sacramento Mobile EV Charging.
Plus, we've got some hard engineering data detailing the actual literal physics of EV range loss under high commercial stress.
The real value of all this documentation is how it bridges that gap, between the theoretical dashboard view of fleet management.
The software side.
Right, the software side, and the physical reality of the road. It strips away all the marketing hype around public charging networks.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and it just looks strictly at the friction points where modern commercial vehicles are, colliding with totally inadequate legacy support systems.
So the mission of this deep dive today is to equip you with a professional-grade operational overview of 3 critical areas.
Let's lay them out.
First, we're looking at the operational physics of EV resistance, like specifically why fleet vehicles are hitting absolute zero in localized geographic pockets.
Which is fascinating data.
It really is.
Yeah.
Second, we're going to break down the mechanics of the professional standard of damage-free EV rescue.
Comparing mobile energy delivery to the pretty severe mechanical risks of the legacy towing industry.
Right. The towing trap, as the sources call it. And finally, we'll calculate true fleet ROI by building what the sources define as a 247 strategic energy buffer.
Because solving fleet downtime requires moving past this assumption that a dead battery is just, driver error.
Right. It's not just someone forgetting to plug in.
Exactly. We have to analyze the invisible thermal and mechanical forces causing that rapid depletion before we can even talk about implementing a valid rescue protocol.
Okay, so if gravity and thermal management are just blindly burning through the battery's reserves, let's look at the exact mechanism.
Let's do it.
We need to move from the theory of route planning to the actual root cause of the breakdown. The documentation points heavily to localized topography.
Specifically, routes climbing out of the Sacramento Valley, heading up toward the I-80 mountain passes.
The sources actually refer to this as the physics of range anxiety.
Yeah, and it's a great term, because when an EV operates on a flat grade, it's, frankly, a marvel of energy conservation.
Oh, totally. Super efficient.
Right. The aerodynamic drag and rolling resistance are relatively constant, and the predictive dashboard algorithms map that discharge curve with really high accuracy.
But then you hit a hill.
But then you hit a sustained steep grade. The moment a heavy commercial EV, say like a loaded transit van or a fully occupied rideshare vehicle, hits that incline, that linear discharge curve just completely shatters.
Because fighting gravity requires a continuous, massive spike in torque.
Exactly.
So it's like running a marathon. Jogging on a flat track burns fuel at a steady, predictable rate. You can pace yourself.
Right, you find your rhythm.
But the moment you start sprinting uphill with a heavy backpack, you hit a wall, and your energy burns at a totally different compounding rate. It fundamentally changes the power consumption equation.
That's a perfect analogy. You aren't just maintaining momentum anymore. You are demanding the electric motors physically lift thousands of pounds of chassis and payload against the force of the Earth over an extended period.
Which has to take a massive toll on the electrical system.
It does. That sustained torque requirement means a continuous high amperage draw from the battery pack. And this is exactly where the mechanical reality diverges from what the dashboard is telling the driver.
Because the software is just guessing based on averages, right?
Basically. Pulling that much continuous amperage doesn't just drain the battery proportionally to the work being done, it generates a tremendous amount of internal resistance.
Oh, I see.
And consequently, a massive amount of heat within the battery cells themselves.
Which introduces a negative feedback loop. So climbing a steep grade in a heavily loaded EV isn't just about using more fuel to go up a hill. It's like, I don't know, trying to run a commercial air conditioner with a hand crank.
Yeah, exactly.
The harder the motors work to move the vehicle up the pass, the hotter the battery gets.
And to prevent catastrophic thermal runaway, the battery literally catching fire, the vehicle's thermal management system automatically kicks into high gear.
So the cooling system is fighting the heat.
Right. The liquid cooling pumps spool up to maximum, the radiator fans engage, and all of those secondary systems require their own substantial power draw.
Wait, so the vehicle is spending a huge chunk of its remaining battery just trying to cool itself down.
Exactly. While simultaneously fighting gravity. The sources define this as a compounding energy drain.
Wow.
The state of charge just plummets at a terrifyingly accelerated rate, and it catches commercial drivers completely off guard.
But wait, I have to push back here a little bit. Shouldn't fleet managers or drivers just, see the battery dropping faster than expected and pull over to charge before it hits zero? Like, just look at the dashboard and adapt.
What's fascinating here is that they do try. The drivers aren't stupid. But this rapid depletion often happens exactly when vehicles hit isolated areas where charging infrastructure is entirely non-existent.
Okay.
It's an infrastructure failure. The routing algorithms rely heavily on historical averages and ambient temperature data. They are really good at macro predictions.
But they struggle with the micro fluctuations, right?
Exactly. Real-time cell voltage sag. If a specific driver has a slightly heavier load than average, encounters a headwind on a 6% grade, and say the battery pack is a bit older with slightly higher internal resistance,
The thermal load just spikes.
it spikes far beyond the algorithm's smoothed-out predictive model. So the dashboard might promise 40 miles of range at the base of the incline, and 12 miles later, the battery enters immediate derate mode and shuts down.
So the algorithm smooths out the edge cases. But those edge cases are exactly where the commercial driver gets stranded in real life.
Right.
And this geography, these steep inclines where this compounding thermal drain happens, is almost inherently isolated.
Yeah, usually mountain passes or long stretches outside the city.
So the driver realizes the dashboard was wrong, the battery is flashing red, but the geography causing the drain is the exact same geography that has no commercial chargers.
Right. It's the worst possible place for the prediction to fail. The vehicle hits critical depletion right in a pocket where there is zero safety net. The driver tries to alter the route to find a plug, but they're operating in a total dead zone.
Okay. But even when we step away from those isolated mountain passes and just look strictly at urban operations, the data still paints a really grim picture of the public grid.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources explicitly detail this no-charger reality in the Sacramento area. If you're an operator managing a local delivery route or an airport shuttle service, relying on public infrastructure is basically an operational gamble.
And it frequently fails. The documentation points to a systemic disconnect between the digital routing apps and the physical hardware reality.
Because the app says a charger is there.
Right. A fleet manager's operational model assumes a driver can just pull up to a public level 3 fast charger, plug in for 20 minutes, and resume the route.
Easy enough in theory.
But the roadside rescue logs show a completely different pattern. Drivers navigate to a station only to find out-of-service equipment, and the network's API hasn't updated yet to tell the app the charger is broken.
That is incredibly frustrating. Or they arrive to find the physical hardware is actually working, but there's an hour-long queue of vehicles waiting.
Right, which destroys the schedule.
And the sources also highlight the rampant issue of IC.
Oh, yeah, where internal combustion engine vehicles, gas cars, just park in and block the EV charging bays.
It forces the commercial driver into this awful obstacle course. They divert from their primary route to find a charger, discover it's broken or blocked, and then they have to divert again with an even lower battery.
Sacramento International Airport, SMF, is actually highlighted in these briefs as a specific charging desert.
Really? An airport?
Yeah. Consider the operational dynamics of an airport run for a commercial fleet. The turnaround time is the primary metric of profitability.
You have to get in and get out to make money.
Exactly. If a driver enters the SMF perimeter expecting a quick top-up between fares and discovers the hardware is dead, the cascading effect on the day's SLA, the service level agreement, is immediate.
It's just a severe psychological and operational failure point. So you're an Uber driver or a delivery operator. It's 2 a.m. on a dark highway. Your map lied to you, and every minute you sit there, you're losing money and compromising your safety.
Exactly. The digital map promised the seamless hardware interaction. The driver committed their last remaining kilowatt hours to reach that specific coordinate.
And it's a total dead end.
A total dead end. Every minute the vehicle sits idle while the driver hunts for a secondary option, the operator bleeds revenue.
And when the battery finally hits absolute zero, whether they're on the shoulder of I-80 or stuck in an airport parking structure, that's when the default legacy reaction kicks in.
This raises an important question, right? How does legacy infrastructure adapt to modern technology? Because, spoiler alert, it doesn't adapt well.
Right. The driver just defaults to the internal combustion era playbook. They call dispatch and request a traditional tow truck.
Yep. And the technical documentation we are analyzing is so emphatic that this exact moment, the decision to dispatch a flatbed or a wheel lift tow truck, is where the primary risk to the fleet asset actually begins.
The sources call traditional towing for EVs the towing trap or the price scam.
Because it's not just inefficient, it is highly, highly mechanically dangerous.
We really need to thoroughly examine the engineering differences here between an internal combustion drivetrain and a high-voltage EV architecture.
Yeah.
Because that explains why the sources advocate so aggressively for this new professional standard of mobile charging.
Let's break it down. In a legacy gas vehicle, the mechanical connection between the wheels and the engine is easily severed.
You just shift into neutral.
Exactly. You shift the transmission into neutral, the gears decouple, and the vehicle can be winched, dragged, or rolled onto a flatbed with relative safety.
The only consequence of a dead battery in a gas car is that you just can't run the starter motor.
Right. But the architecture of a commercial EV, particularly the direct drive systems found in vehicles like Rivian delivery vans or Tesla fleet cars, does not allow for a simple mechanical disconnect.
Wait, so the motors are always connected to the wheels?
Permanently. The electric motors are permanently engaged with the wheels. They utilize permanent magnet synchronous motors or AC induction motors.
Okay, so what happens when a tow truck pulls them?
Because of this direct engagement, whenever the wheels of the EV are turning, the internal rotor of the motor is physically spinning within the stator.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh yeah. According to the basic laws of electromagnetism, when you spin a rotor inside a stator, the motor ceases to be a propulsion device. It instantly becomes a high-voltage generator.
It creates alternating current just by rolling down the road.
Exactly.
Under normal driving conditions, that's actually a feature, right? That's just regenerative braking.
Yes, normally. The vehicle's battery management system, the BMS, and the inverters carefully manage that generated current. They convert it from AC to direct current, DC, and feed it safely back into the battery pack to extend your range.
But we are talking about a scenario where the vehicle is completely dead.
Dead on the side of the road.
The high-voltage contactors have opened, the BMS is totally offline, and the thermal management systems are entirely shut down.
So if an uninformed tow operator hooks up that EV and physically drags it with the drive wheels on the ground, those electric motors are still acting as generators.
Because the reels are turning.
Right. They are forcefully inducing a massive unregulated alternating current.
Wait, so the traditional rescue method can actually fry your drivetrain and total the car. You're paying hundreds of dollars to let someone potentially destroy your fleet vehicle.
I know it sounds crazy, but yes, you are pushing that uncontrolled current directly into an offline inverter system.
Without the BMS awake to regulate the voltage or convert the AC to DC or even manage the generated heat.
Exactly. That current just overwhelms the inverter components. It physically melts the internal circuitry, fries the power electronics, and it can even arc across the high-voltage bus bars.
That is insane.
The damage is catastrophic, and it's basically instantaneous.
So you're authorizing a $300 dispatch fee to a legacy tow company to unknowingly destroy a $15,000 to $20,000 drive unit.
Yep, and that doesn't even factor in the secondary damage.
There's more.
Oh yeah. Many commercial EVs utilize electronic parking brakes that clamp down automatically when the 12-volt system dies. So if a tow operator tries to drag a vehicle with locked electronic brakes onto a flatbed, they are destroying the tires and the braking calipers simultaneously.
So the financial crater just expands.
Massively. And it gets worse when you look at the immediate aftermath. The traditional tow truck cannot generate electricity. It can only relocate the asset.
Right, it just moves the dead car from point A to point B.
So the vehicle is hauled to a dealership or a centralized fleet maintenance yard, usually in the middle of the night.
Where it just enters a queue?
It sits entirely untouched. The documentation indicates that a towed EV often sits on a dealership lot for 72 hours before a technician even looks at it.
3 days.
Just to plug it in and clear the localized fault codes caused by the total depletion.
For a commercial logistics operator, 72 hours of total asset downtime is catastrophic. That vehicle is supposed to be making money every day.
Exactly. This is exactly why Sacramento Mobile EV Charging and E-Rescue position mobile energy delivery as the mandatory professional standard.
Because they bypass the physical relocation of the asset entirely.
Right. Instead of risking the mechanical integrity of the drivetrain just to bring the car to a stationary power source, the power is dispatched directly to the localized coordinates of the stranded vehicle.
The mechanics of that intervention sound surgically precise compared to a traditional tow.
It's a totally different approach. A specialized utility vehicle equipped with a high-capacity mobile Level 2 or Level 3 charging architecture arrives right at the breakdown site.
So the operator just connects a high-voltage transfer cable directly to the EV's charge port.
Yep. The wheels of the commercial fleet vehicle never even leave the pavement. The electronic parking brake remains safely engaged. The drivetrain is completely undisturbed.
So there's zero mechanical risk.
Zero. The service transfers a highly regulated, monitored surge of kilowatt hours directly into the depleted battery pack.
It provides just enough structural charge to safely reactivate the BMS, boot up the thermal systems, and basically give the vehicle 15 to 20 miles of range.
Which is more than enough to safely navigate to a verified operational fast charging hub or just return to the central fleet depot.
The avoided costs there are staggering when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. The operator avoids the baseline towing fee, they eliminate the 72-hour dealership downtime entirely, and they completely negate the risk of a $15,000 drivetrain replacement.
The marketing tagline they use in the briefs is, "Get charged, not towed."
It's brilliant because it strips away the concept of roadside assistance entirely. It reclassifies mobile charging as a critical risk mitigation protocol.
Right. You are protecting the capital expenditure of the fleet asset from the blunt force trauma of unregulated legacy towing.
But, implementing this requires a major shift in driver behavior.
Because of the stress, right. If you're a commercial driver stranded on the shoulder of I-80 at 2 in the morning, in the pouring rain, the psychological stress has to be immense.
It really is. The cognitive load of missing a delivery window, combined with the literal physical danger of high-speed traffic right next to you, it triggers a panic response.
And in a panic, people default to familiar patterns.
Exactly. They pull out their phone and search for tow truck near me.
Right. So the sources actually dedicate a significant portion of their operational strategy to this exact behavioral hurdle, which I found super interesting.
The psychology of the rescue.
Exactly. We have this detailed breakdown of the master visual content engine utilized by EEE and their local Sacramento network.
It's an exploration into how a brand intercepts a panic-driven decision.
Right. How do you communicate unassailable technical authority to a driver who's freaking out on the side of the highway?
The directives for their visual assets are highly calculated. They enforce this cinematic, high-visibility, ultra-realistic aesthetic.
Like dark, high-contrast imagery, heavily featuring neon green and black color palettes.
Right. They explicitly reject any imagery that looks like a traditional mom-and-pop mechanic shop.
Because a rusted flatbed truck with a flashing yellow light rolling up behind a stranded driver doesn't feel like a professional tech intervention.
No, it feels chaotic. It feels industrial and, frankly, unregulated.
It feels like your car's being taken hostage. EERescue's visual strategy counters that by deploying these modern utility charging trucks.
The mandated imagery highlights glowing neon green charging cables cutting through dark, rainy environments. They want the driver to see a specialized tech response unit.
Right, it signals a surgical operation. The neon green creates this visual association with high-voltage electricity and modern software architecture.
And the messaging campaigns run right alongside those visuals. They're equally aggressive.
Like, stop the tow, don't risk your drivetrain, and emergency energy everywhere.
These are authoritative commands. They're designed specifically to break the driver's default cognitive loop of just calling a standard tow truck.
The documentation also specifies strict design rules for their digital interfaces, which I noticed. They heavily utilize dark mode UI and maintain text within strict safe zones, so it renders perfectly across any mobile device.
Which might seem like overkill for a roadside service, but for a B2B fleet manager evaluating vendor partnerships, those design choices act as a proxy for back-end technological competence.
Right. If the vendor presents this flawless, highly optimized, app-driven dispatch interface with live GPS tracking and precise ETA screens, they look like a scalable, data-driven network.
Exactly. It speaks the same language as the logistics software the fleet manager is already using, like Samsara or Geotab.
It communicates that the rescue protocol is going to be executed with the exact same digital precision the fleet operator expects from their internal dashboards.
The entire visual and linguistic framework is engineered to convince everyone involved, both the stranded driver and the corporate logistics director.
Convince them that mobile charging is the safest, most technologically advanced standard of care available.
Which it objectively is, based on the physics we talked about earlier.
Okay, so we've isolated the localized physics causing the compounding energy drain. We've examined the structural failures of the public charging grid in places like SMF.
Right.
And we've deeply analyzed the catastrophic mechanical risks of the towing trap and how mobile charging establishes itself through operational psychology.
So now we have to bring it all home.
Right. The final step is translating all of this into hard numbers. So what does this all mean?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to move from the mechanics of the roadside intervention to the ultimate bottom line of the B2B fleet.
The spreadsheets.
The spreadsheets. Everything we've discussed filters down into calculating fleet ROI through the implementation of what they call a 247 strategic buffer.
In commercial logistics, whether you're managing a fleet of delivery vans for last-mile distribution in Sacramento, where you're overseeing a massive block of Uber and Lyft operators, the singular defining metric of profitability is uptime.
Period. An asset that is not moving is actively burning capital.
A stranded commercial vehicle generates this massive radius of financial damage. Like, an Uber driver stuck with a dead battery isn't just sitting there, they're missing peak surge pricing hours.
And a commercial delivery operator is missing strict contracted delivery windows. This results in broken SLAs, service level agreements.
And the cost of a broken SLA often completely dwarfs the physical cost of the delivery itself.
Oh, easily. You are looking at financial penalties baked right into the contract, plus the administrative cost of dispatching a secondary vehicle just to recover the cargo.
And the incalculable damage to client trust and reputation. You really cannot report back to a B2B client that a critical pallet of goods is 4 hours late because the driver was stuck in an unmoving queue at a broken public fast charger.
They don't care. They just want their goods, which is exactly why Sacramento Mobile EV Charging frames their offering as a 247 strategic buffer.
It's an engineered layer of resilience.
Exactly. By integrating a dedicated mobile energy provider directly into the fleet's operational protocol, the manager creates an immediate, predictable safety net.
One that entirely bypasses all those chaotic variables of the public charging grid we talked about.
Right. The driver no longer wastes hours diverting into unknown geographic zones hunting for functional hardware.
When that compounding thermal drain on a steep grade depletes the battery, the driver just safely pulls over on the shoulder and triggers the mobile rescue protocol.
It creates an operational overlap, which is huge for efficiency. Instead of the vehicle sitting dormant in a dealership queue for 72 hours, the specialized utility unit arrives within a defined SLA window of its own.
And the driver can just utilize that time to log their legally mandated breaks or manage administrative paperwork while the high voltage transfer occurs right there on the shoulder.
Right. They aren't just losing time.
It literally functions exactly like an in-air refueling tanker for a fighter jet.
That's a great way to put it.
The asset does not abandon its mission path to locate a stationary refueling depot. The energy source intercepts the asset along its route. The interruption to the operational timeline is minimized to just a minor fraction of the legacy towing alternative.
And when you compare the financial model side by side, the ROI solidifies instantly. Let's look at scenario A, the traditional legacy reaction.
Okay, lay it out.
The driver hits 0%. The fleet manager pays a $300 tow dispatch fee. The tow operator improperly loads the direct drive EV, inducing unregulated current and causing $15,000 in drivetrain damage.
Ouch.
The asset sits at a repair facility for 4 days. The business loses 96 hours of operational revenue, fails multiple SLAs, and incurs a massive repair bill on top of it all.
It's a total disaster. Okay, now let's look at scenario B. The fleet operates with a mobile charging protocol.
Right?
The driver hits 0%. The app dispatches a mobile charging unit. For a fee structurally similar to, or honestly even less than the baseline tow, the utility truck arrives.
They securely connect the high voltage cable and transfer 20 miles of range.
The vehicle's wheels never rotate, zeroing out the mechanical risk entirely. The entire intervention takes maybe 45 minutes, the driver completes the route, and the asset remains in continuous operation the very next morning.
Integrating that strategic buffer takes a chaotic, multi-variable crisis that could easily run into 5 figures of damage and reduces it to a totally predictable, low downtime line item on a spreadsheet.
It restores the absolute precision that the dispatch dashboard originally promised you.
Precisely. Impartially looking at the hard data from these sources, the actionable intelligence for the commercial operator here is just definitive.
Let's summarize the big takeaways for the listeners. First, sophisticated routing algorithms cannot always predict the compounding thermal and physical drain of steep topography combined with commercial payloads.
Right. You absolutely must account for localized infrastructure failure in those exact high-stress zones.
Second, the towing trap is a mechanically incompatible legacy solution applied to modern high-voltage architecture.
The physics of direct drive permanent magnet motors make traditional towing an unacceptable financial gamble for fleets. A damage-free standard of care isn't just nice to have, it's a mandatory operational requirement.
And third, operational resilience can be purchased and modeled. On-demand mobile charging acts as an ROI-positive 24/7 strategic buffer.
It actively protects your uptime and insulates your commercial fleets from the failures of the public grid, particularly in critical logistics hubs like the Sacramento Valley and SMF.
Ultimately, how you prepare your drivers for that inevitable 0% battery moment determines the profitability of your entire fleet operation.
And, looking at the trajectory of this technology, the documentation implies a pretty massive shift in how we might structure commercial energy grids in the future.
I was hoping we'd get to this, because right now, establishing this strategic buffer requires partnering with a third-party utility like Sacramento Mobile EV Charging. A dedicated separate rescue unit has to be dispatched to the stranded asset.
Right, which works beautifully today. But as bidirectional charging hardware and vehicle-to-load software become more standardized across all commercial platforms, the architecture of the rescue itself is going to evolve.
We are looking at a near future where dynamic, vehicle-to-vehicle or V2V emergency charging becomes natively integrated into the fleet itself.
It's mind-blowing to think about. Instead of dispatching a third-party utility truck, the fleet manager's dashboard identifies that, say, Delivery Van A is stranded on I-80 with a dead battery.
And the routing software automatically flags Delivery Van B, which happens to be 3 miles away and currently sitting at an 85% state of charge.
Right. Both vehicles are equipped with standardized high-voltage transfer cables.
So Van B intercepts Van A, physically connects on the shoulder, and transfers 15 kilowatt hours of range directly from its own battery pack into the stranded vehicle.
The fleet essentially becomes a self-healing, decentralized energy grid.
That is just so cool. It completely severs the reliance on stationary public infrastructure for emergency recovery. Every single vehicle on the road transforms into a potential mobile rescue node.
It is the ultimate realization of the strategic buffer. The fleet generates its own resilience entirely internally.
It's a phenomenal operational paradigm shift. You transition from hoping the digital map is accurate regarding public chargers to deploying a specialized mobile utility truck to eventually having the fleet algorithmically rescue itself in real time.
But until bidirectional V2V transfer becomes the ubiquitous standard, which is still a little ways off, managing the localized realities of today's topography and inadequate public charging networks remains the primary challenge.
The physical world will continuously introduce friction into the digital predictive models. Mitigating that friction requires having the right high-voltage tools on hand.
Deploying a mobile energy strategy allows you to bridge that gap today.
When the asset hits zero and the dashboard breaks, the mobile charger restores the state of charge, the telemetry lights back up, and the operation continues. Total control restored. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Review your protocols, protect your drivetrains, and we will see you next time.